People are talking about RM, joking about the disbandment of the group. People are questioning what's going on with Suga. We have a Korean model that is apparently believed to be in JK's bed. And then we have BTS allegedly being erased for an achievement. So hey Dumplings, it's Dave Disci. Let's get into it. Recently, the group 17 performed at NPR's Tiny Desk concert. This was a huge deal back when BTS did it during the pandemic because it was one of the first times that they performed on a mainstream American platform, and such a huge one at that. Like, so many Americans listen to NPR on their way to work or just in general, and this is definitely a huge defining factor where it puts these artists not only in America but in a mainstream way and in a mainstream audience. So it's not just like kids listening to this, right? And I think this was promoted or mentioned that 17 was going to be performing. But if they hadn't mentioned it, it would quite literally just be adults, or like, I don't think most teenagers or kids listen to NPR. I know I did not growing up, and I still don't really, honestly. But when 17 performed, Billboard announced that this was the first time a K-pop group had performed at the Tiny Desk concert. And obviously that's not true because we've had BTS perform prior. This is extremely frustrating, right? Because Billboard is a media site that's obviously covered BTS many times, so they definitely should be aware of who BTS is. But one thing that is really frustrating is that the media site often misses things, and sometimes, perhaps even oftentimes, they miss things that are literally right in front of them. And people don't know how they end up missing things. So for example, if Billboard didn't ever cover BTS ever, and then just claim that 17 was the first to perform there, it would be really frustrating still, because how would they not know who BTS is? Now, some people have some theories as to why this achievement was left out in relation to BTS, because they were saying that BTS performed during the pandemic, and they had performed obviously at home because they couldn't take a flight to the US. So their episode was named Tiny Desk in parentheses home and then concert. So people were saying, well, maybe this is considered a different series versus the regular NPR Tiny Desk concert. However, I believe it's all in the same category. It really makes no difference whether it's at home or whether it's in their studio, because the studio physical building does not make the Tiny Desk concert, right? Like maybe the set design and stuff, which BTS got perfectly. But the actual episode is maybe just the set design and then the singers. And that's exactly what BTS had. So this was really frustrating, right? And I can't really think of a particular reason why they would forget that or discount that, because BTS's video has about 66 million views. But obviously people were outraged by this and were obviously asking for either an apology or a repost of the actual information. And I don't know if they're actually going to do that, but we shall see. I'm definitely very curious to know why specific media sites like to leave certain things out. Just kind of my own personal experience and my own personal example. If I report on something that I know a couple of my peers are also reporting on, I'll notice that the media roundups at the end of the night will include all of my friends, but not me. So that's just things that I've noticed where sometimes they'll just miss me. And if I want coverage for something, which I don't usually care too much about, but if I did want coverage for something, I would have to submit it myself. And quite obviously, they're just not looking at my page. And I'm wondering if this is the same thing for BTS, but obviously shouldn't happen with them because they're huge, right? So people should definitely be aware of what they're doing, but I digress. Let's see what happens. There's been ongoing rumors about JK being in a relationship with a model called Hyunji Shin. She's a Korean model, and she's apparently really close friends with Jennie, and people have now connected her, the model, with JK. One of the examples that people are using is the fact that apparently the model posted on her Instagram a photo of maybe her ceiling, and it looked like she was laying in bed and she was taking a mirror picture, and the mirror was on the ceiling. And then the mirror shows like a bit of the wall color as well as the wall design, which looks very similar allegedly to what JK has in his apartment. Now I will say, if JK has a mirror above his bed, I personally think that's a little weird. I'm not going to say much else other than that, and I honestly hope he doesn't have that because I think it's really weird, but to each their own, I guess. People were taking moments from his live stream that he's obviously shown like of his home and other parts and shown the design on the wall, and they were saying that it was very similar to this bedroom photo that the model showed. Now, just because JK has those designs in his living room or whatever, does that mean that he has them necessarily in his bedroom? So that of course does not mean that we are in fact seeing what his bedroom looks like. I don't think he's ever even streamed in his bedroom, but I could be wrong about that. We also have to consider the culture they grew up in and the materials and the building blocks that they have for their homes around them. All of that stuff dictates whether or not they would have a specific design. So I don't currently know what it is and what currently is like trendy, but I think it's a very minimalist decor style here in the US. And I feel like there's no real one specific look now, but if you were to go back a few years, the gray wall, the black and white color scheme, that was very much in. And pretty much everyone wanted their home to appear like that because it would be luxury and the design would be really simple. And if someone wanted that look and they wanted a more modern, contemporary, and chic luxury look, then they're going to go for this black and white grayscale type of look. And so what happens from there? Then that look becomes commercialized, it becomes something that construction workers and interior design people know about and can provide, and then it becomes something that pretty much anyone can have. When I see similarities in a home or a wall, I tend to not see that as even a piece of evidence that we could even rely on, because I'm sure there are some things in just my apartment that I could point to, like my wall could look similar to what JK has, and if not, I can literally spend $20 and do it. Also, not to be super rude or mean, I don't really understand how this rumor came about. This model, from what I've seen, is not super famous, and I hope that's not insulting, but it's just, they're not. And the internet and fans seem to be pushing this rumor so heavily, and I don't really know where it came from, because typically JK or any of the BTS members get shipped with people who are very much on the rise, and people who are almost like household names in K-pop. So this was very interesting and random, it seemed. Like it was being pushed so hard. And I hope people use critical thinking when they read and see things like this. RM was recently on a live stream that caused a little bit of backlash. Articles all over the internet started talking about a moment in which the recent live stream showed RM talking about BTS disbanding, and people were like, oh my god, it's happening. And they were freaking out about that. But we need to talk about what actually happened here, as a lot of that and what is being said in the articles were taken out of context. Now, given some articles, and I would say maybe even the majority of articles, we're just using the disband thing as clickbait. And the actual article, they did explain what I'm about to explain. But there were some articles who just like ran with it and reported it as truth, even though it was just clickbait, and that's not okay, I don't think. Now, during the stream, RM was with Jimin, and they noticed that there was only one viewer on, and so it seemed as if there was only one person watching, and this likely was because it was lagging, and there's probably some people coming on and the system couldn't count all the people in time, and so they were kind of joking about that. They were kind of like, oh my god, only one viewer, and then RM made a joke like, oh, should we leave? Time to disband, and that sort of stuff, as in he's making a joke about the fact that there's only one person watching. So as you can see, it's a very different situation, right? He wasn't really saying any of that stuff. He was simply making a joke because there was only one person watching, or it appeared as if there was only one person watching. However, of course, these are jokes, and the boys in general would feel or know to be more careful about this stuff, and they're going to be aware that stuff like this would be taken out of context and twisted. And I don't know if people actually do mind that things are taken out of context in the way that they do, because I think people are upset when it's a story that simply isn't true, and then they try to build this whole narrative around this story that isn't true. Like, some people have made up this narrative of when they believe that the boys are going to disband, which obviously isn't happening. And other people who are reading the article that are explaining the situation are just simply thinking that these articles are taking things out of context, or the fact that the boys are working on new music, that must mean that they're not disbanding, all of which is said in a lot of the articles. So I would encourage people, one, to read the articles, and then I would encourage other people to be aware of the fact that just because something can be spun for clickbait doesn't mean that it needs to be then reported as the truth in the video, which is something that I read a lot and see a lot of videos of lately. So let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you check out Patreon. I'll leave a link at the top of the description. Thank you so much for this lovely comment right here. Love you. Bye.